Here's a couple real common little problems you'll see on these old W123s. And I'm going to do this on my blue 300D because it's just an irritant. Look at that. That door pull's all broken and hanging off the side. I guess I can kind of live with that because it still works, but the one I can't live with is this door check strap's not working. So if you park on a hill and you get in the car, you know, the door's going to just swing in and hit your leg. And I don't like that. So we have a door stopper, door check strap that's bad. We have this chrome door pull that's broken. And this will be a good time to get inside this door, check the window regulator, lubricate everything, and fix these two items. Before I put these bolts back in, we're going to use thread locker on all three of them. Make sure they don't loosen up. These have a tendency to loosen up, so always use some sort of thread locker or Loctite when you reinstall the three bolts or the nut for the door check strap. Getting these two bolts started can be really frustrating. A couple things you can do. One is take this rubber and peel it back and put it on the back side of the check strap, and then put a punch in the end here. And see, what this will allow you to do is kind of move this around and line it up, and you may need to get it started with a little box end like this just to get the thread started before you apply a socket to it. You want them tight, but you can strip them, so don't get too carried away. Notice how I've choked up on my ratchet here. And that's one of the reasons why you use thread locker, is you want these snug but not so tight you'll break the bolts off, because they will tend to loosen up. Then I can come in here and tighten this one up. While I have this door panel off, there's a couple of things I want to do. You definitely want to check the tightness of any of the bolts or the nuts. Look at that, it's loose. That hold the window regulator and the window power motor on here. These also tend to loosen up and will affect the operation of your power window motor. Look at that, they're all loose. Now I'm going to go ahead and run the motor up and down, see how well it's working, because we want to lubricate that mechanism while we're inside the door. That's not too bad. A little slow going up, Looks like that regulator's been replaced because it's not all wonked out of shape. But it is pretty dry right in here. Real dry on the slide. And I'm going to reach up in there and lubricate the gears. I'm going to have to do that by a braille. And then we're going to come in and lubricate these channels, because a lot of times it's the channels here that cause the window to drag, which wears out the window regulator mechanism. Now on this slide here that has the plastic bushing, I like to use heavy synthetic grease. I don't like to use any type of a petroleum-based product on these because it will deteriorate that plastic. But I can take this heavy synthetic grease and just really put it on there. I like the synthetic grease because it seems to hold up better to rainwater, which does get down into these doors. I'll run the window up and down a couple times and recheck how well this slide is moving. But now I'm going to take the heavy synthetic oil that I used to lubricate the door pull with, and I'm going to lubricate this pivot point on the window regulator. Now we'll roll the window back up, and I'll get my extreme pressure black moly grease, and I'm going to reach up in there and try to grease the gear teeth on the regulator itself. And this gets a little messy because you have to use your hand to do this. You have to reach up in there. I can feel all the teeth here, and I can feel the teeth on the regulator. So we'll get the moly grease out. Okay, let's reach up in there and get all these teeth lubricated. And find the head of the motor too and lubricate those gears real well. Don't be afraid to get a little extra in there. This is really important. Okay, now I can clean my hand up, and we'll run the motor up and down a couple more times. Okay, it's running a little bit better. There's one final thing I want to do with this window regulator mechanism, and that's lubricate this groove, these channels. And I found the best lubricant for these is silicone. The problem is if you use silicone spray, it dries out and disappears because it's got a solvent in it. If you use silicone grease like you see here, well, that's really messy and gooey and get your window really sticky. So I've developed a silicone oil. There's my silicone oil. It's much thicker than silicone spray, but it's not so greasy like silicone grease. So I will take now the brush and I will work this silicone oil into the groove of the window channel. Then I'll have to get down here put it right up in this side also. Of course, after you run the window up and down a couple times, you're going to have to clean the edges a little bit. But it isn't as bad to clean up this silicone oil as it would be the grease. Now I'm going to run the window up, and then I'll try to reach up in here and get what I can from underneath. This is a little more difficult to get on the front. You're going to have to load up the acid brush and go in with your arm like this and reach up in there. You can feel the channel and get the brush in and and work it up and down all the way up as far as you can. Okay, there's my silicone oil technique. Now let's exercise this window a little bit. And doing this, by the way, puts a lot less stress on the regulator. And I'm convinced the reason these window regulators are so prone to bending and stripping out is a lack of lubrication, both in the mechanism itself and in the window channels. Now you can see it running up and down, and it doesn't appear that the motor is groaning quite as much as when I first started this lubrication process. Okay, that's great. There's one more thing I want to lubricate, and then we'll stick that plastic back on, glue it down with some spray adhesive, and then put the door panel back on. Anytime you have the door panel off on these old Mercedes, I don't care what year and model it is, you want to lubricate this latch mechanism. It really gets gummed up, and if it gets bad enough, you won't be able to get the door open. The door will actually seize shut. Now, I prefer to use synthetic oil for this application because there's also some plastic parts in there. I used to spray a petroleum-based spray lubricant in there, but I don't anymore. I prefer using this thick synthetic oil and the curved tip syringe, which I supply in my lube kit. And I'm going to take that curved tip syringe and I'm going to go in here and I'm going to squirt the daylights out of this mechanism. Just get in there and squirt away. And I'll come over on this side and squirt down in through here. And I'll work the handle back and forth as I do this. Okay, there you go. The old door maintenance on the old gal's done, on the driver's door at least. You know, take one of these doors a week and do them. You know, and if you have any extra holes in your plastic, I found it's great to just use a clear packing tape. And sometimes this will save you from having to make an entirely new plastic inside door cover. But if you have any holes like this, you really want to seal these up to keep the water off the back side of your door panel. And now for an after shot. Look at that. See, the door stays open. So when I park on a hill, it's not going to bang into my leg. And notice how nice it closes. With that lubricated like that. And of course the door pull, look at how smooth that is when I open the door. You know, that's just a little irritant. The slow window's another irritant. You know, the lack of closing smoothly is another irritant. The check strap is another irritant. And within an hour to 2 hours, depending upon how much work you do on this, you've suddenly improved your driving pleasure. So imagine how nice it's going to be when I do all 4 doors.